Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for this webinar on endurance exercise and addiction recovery. My name is Kayla Carr, and I'm the marketing coordinator at Wasatch Crest. And today we have specialists in both addiction treatment and endurance exercise to talk about the topic. So it should be a good discussion. Here are our presenters. We have Rich McDonald, who's the Executive Director, Wasatch Crest. And then we have Blu Robinson, who's the head coach of Addict to Athlete. And then we have the co-founders of the Valkyrie Multisport Relay, which takes place in Utah, Sean Snow and Dan Merkley. So I'll let them introduce themselves. And Rich, do you want to go ahead and start?
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. This is a topic I'm really excited to talk about. It's something that's been a big part of endurance sports have been a huge part of my own recovery, and so it's an awesome topic. So as Kayla said, I'm the executive director at Wasatch Crest. One of the things that I've been able to do here at Wasatch is build a program out that really focuses on the outdoors and getting people moving, and utilizes our surroundings in the Wasatch Mountains to really get people re-engaged in healthy lifestyle choices and really be able to recover in a meaningful, happy way. And I'm excited for our guests to hear from them. And thanks again for being here.
Awesome, Rich. This is Blu Robinson, head coach of Team Addict to Athlete. Yeah, this is a great opportunity to get some more awareness out there on the importance of exercise, health, and wellness as it pertains to mental health and recovery. So, Addict to Athlete was an idea I had going on 11 years ago, where we thought there would be a interest in helping people overcome addiction through health, recreation, movement, service, so on and so forth. And my gosh, did it take off. I kind of used it as an excuse to go running at lunchtime when I was working at the Division of Substance Abuse in Utah County as a therapist. And it just kind of ran. So we turned it into a 501c3 nonprofit, and now we have about 3,000 athletes participating throughout the country, and opening chapters pretty much on a bi-monthly basis now. So it's working, and we use our erase and replace philosophy that seems to resonate with people. So I'm excited to be here, talk a little bit about what I've seen in this arena, and just very, very thankful that the Valkyrie race series is allowing Team Addict Athlete to come up and participate, because it's going to be a great experience.
Thanks, Blu. Hi, my name is Dan Merkley, and I'm co-founder of the Valkyrie Multisport Relay. My background is actually in major sporting events, but not in the way you might think naturally about it. I've been planning services for major international events for most of 25 years. I've spent a lot of time living abroad, organizing and operating Olympic villages, so the athlete villages where athletes and coaches and trainers are staying. And while I've never been a world-class athlete myself, I think I have some insight I'd like to share with you today on just what it's like to be surrounded by that kind of application of yourself into what you're doing, whether you're an athlete or whether you're applying yourself to a grand event like the Olympic Games or World Cup.
Awesome. Hey, my name is Sean Snow, again, co-founder of Valkyrie Relay. Valkyrie Relay, the Heber Valley Marathon, and Endurance Sports Summit, which all coincide the same day. Known Richard for most of my life. Spent a little bit of time as a tech up at Wasatch Crest, during which time I was up there, actually kind of formulated the course for the Valkyrie up in the Heber Valley, which is just an amazing venue, pretty much world class, something you can't really find anywhere else in the world. So yeah, we're grateful to be connected with Wasatch Crest, Addict to Athlete, and looking forward to this year's Valkyrie Relay.
All right, awesome, guys. Thanks so much for those introductions, and let's go ahead and start this discussion. So I'd like each of you to talk about the benefits of endurance exercise and other kinds of exercise for addiction recovery. Rich, did you want to go first?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks. So one of the things that we know is mental health and addiction are closely tied together. They are something that deteriorates with active addiction and drug and alcohol use. But we also know that endurance exercise, aerobic exercise, any movement, getting out and about can make a huge difference in mental health. As little as 20 minutes 5 times a week, you'll see overall happiness and wellness improvements. And some of the research shows that it's similar to what you see with many of the antidepressants. And it's something that I've seen time and time again, working with clients for the past 10 years. Pretty amazing. I know that as I looked, and I'm really excited to hear from the other guests, because when I initially got sober, which was 11 years ago, I looked around and saw that everybody I knew in recovery had something they were super passionate about, something that got them out of bed in the morning, something that drove a meaningful life. And I knew from my own experience that, I was an endurance athlete prior to needing to get into treatment and into recovery. And I had seen what once was super important, like really, truly one of the most, after my family, probably most important things in my life was ultra marathons. I quickly deteriorated, and my ability to focus on that and enjoy it all together was at an all-time low by the time I asked for help. And I knew that that's something I could do for myself, that I knew would help my mental health and my overall well-being. I knew it would help my connection with others, because the other men that I ran with on a regular basis and trained with on a regular basis, and I knew that it was going to have to be a big part of my life. And so as we built out the program at Wasatch Crest, one of the things that I've done over the years, beyond just 2 4 or 5 hour rec therapy outings a week, is when I have a caseload, I'll do 1 session in the office and 1 session hiking or walking or running, depending on the client, and get people moving again and getting them excited for all the things in their life that have kind of taken a back seat. Some of the positive effects of endurance exercise on addiction recovery, it's reduced everyday depression, which I already mentioned. We know it reduces cravings, not only for drugs and alcohol, but unhealthy food, increased sense of being in control. So one of the things that I realized was one of the only things I could really control was when I got out of bed in the morning, what I did with my day. And running was a great way for me to feel like I had a sense of accomplishment. I knew I was doing what I needed to do to stay healthy. Endurance exercise provides clearer thinking, higher confidence, self-worth, and really it gave me something while I was trying to focus on one day at a time and staying sober. It gave me a goal down the road, if I signed up for a race or registered for a race, it gave me something that I could look forward to and work towards. And I had to do that one day at a time, whether my training and fitting everything in really kept me present in the moment while still having something to work towards. Last year, Wasatch Crest put together a team for the Valkyrie relay, and it was an incredible experience. So we put a team together, and then also our alumni and current clients volunteered at the race. We're working at aid stations. We're really involved, and it was an incredible experience. And looking back, I can think of 4 or 5 of the folks that were involved because of Wasatch Crest that I bumped into or involved in our alumni program that are so excited to share with me they ran a half marathon or 10K, or the most recent one was, I guess, the Tough Mudder. Anything that we can do to get people engaged in something healthy, it makes a big difference. So.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Rich. Go ahead.
Similar to what Rich is talking about with Addict to Athlete. When I started this 10 years ago, it was because I caught my clients when I was working as a therapist. I caught my clients forging their 12-step sign-off sheets. Part of my program down there was that 3 times a week you had to do an extra meeting outside of regular scheduled treatment. Well, there were only the 12-step programs out there, and when I kind of approached my clients and I'm like, "What are you guys doing? This is kind of a method of your addiction. You guys are lying when this stuff is supposed to be helping you." And really, they said, "Coach, back then it was Blue. This isn't working for us. There's we just don't feel like this is a path." And I know in my own addiction recovery pursuits, it was health and recreation, and specifically mountain biking that got me clean. And I thought, well, shoot, if there's nothing out there, I better look at creating something. And so I thought about what health and recreation did for me, and being able to move from a drug addict into a mountain biker. And that's when my erase and replace philosophy kind of kicked in, because I'm a firm believer that we don't have to, and we shouldn't have to, for the rest of our lives, identify ourselves as an addict. I understand the principles behind that, but for me, I thought there's got to be something to where we can build this up further, so you can move from addict to athlete to father to brother to employer to scholar, so on and so forth. So for me, it was also that mindset of like, let's not typecast you into one paradigm for life. Let's get you into another mindset of like expanding your horizon. What else is out there? So the benefits that I've seen have been incredible. For instance, I love the fact that you put in here the endurance exercise. When I first started the team, I only wanted them to do the smaller races. We're talking like the 5Ks, the 10Ks, and my brother-in-law, who was an ultra marathon runner, he said, Blue, you're kind of like limiting their experience if you keep them there. But my biggest fear was, what happens if this endurance exercise in and of itself turns into an addiction? It's very common that people can find that same tool for addiction in exercise and whatnot. So we had to come up with a better way to approach this and to create some balance in all this. And I thought, well, if we give them the service opportunities, if we give them the team approach, if we approach this in a way that we can be moving towards the goal together, but at the same time, making our communities better, that was the key. And so they started doing more. Now, a funny thing I found is that the athletes, when they started doing the longer runs, some amazing stuff happened. And I noticed this too when I was training real early on with some of my athletes, and we'd get out there running and they'd start processing stuff. And here they are now telling me about trauma and about histories and about past, and we're doing all this therapy while we're running. And I'm like, why are you guys talking to me about this heavy emotional stuff when in my office you're kind of like a brick wall? Well, it was funny because I noticed real quick that they were more in tune to like process the heavy stuff. What I didn't realize until I was trained in it myself was when you move, it mimics what's called EMDR therapy, right? And EMDR therapy helps people overcome trauma through left-right brain stimulation, typically through eye movement. But running does the same thing. And so as we're running, they're starting to now get into that zone. They're processing life, and we're talking about overcoming adversities. We're talking about letting go of the past. One thing that I found really interesting was when we were training for a run once, I had this young lady with me, and she was running, and she said, "Hey, coach, I need to stop." And I'm like, "All right, let's run to that stop sign." So we ran to the stop sign, and when we got there, I thought, "Hey, how about we run to that red pickup?" And it was about another half block up the road. And she's like, "Oh, okay." So we get her up there a little bit further, and we got to that red truck. I'm like, "All right, now to the corner." And she's like, "Oh." So we get to the corner, and she's like, "I knew it." I'm like, "Now to the park," which was about another half mile of running. By the time we reached the park and we stopped to walk for a moment so she could catch her breath, she broke down in tears. And I was like, "Oh man, I think I might have broke her," right? And when we got there and she started crying, she says, "I do this all the time. I give up on myself way too early, way too soon. I knew I had more in me, but I give up on everything. I gave up on my family. I gave up on my kids. I gave up on my schooling." And she's like, "Why do I do this?" And so now we're in this real moment, like therapeutic breakthrough where she's like, why do I give up on myself when I know I have energy in the tank? So when we talk about this endurance exercise and what it does, it starts opening up that pathway for people to start processing life. It is the most beautiful thing. I have ultra marathon runners on Team Addict Athlete that have run 100-mile races, and when we talk about it, they're like, it hurts, Blue. It hurts, coach. But it doesn't hurt as bad as it did the day that I got arrested for my 3rd DUI and I heard that jail door slam behind me. Or it didn't hurt as bad as my children being taken away by the state of Utah and me losing them because of my drug addiction. All the pain that I've been through doesn't even compare to running up this mountain and accomplishing these goals. So I think that the people in addiction recovery, they have an amazing ability to channel that pain and turn it into energy instead of trying to hide from it and suppress it. I've seen them overcome such amazing adversity through leaning into it and not being afraid of it and using it for their advantage instead of their disadvantage. So there are hundreds of aspects of how recovery can just be strengthened. But it's more than just even that. It's that connection to your environment. It's about like Sean was saying. It's about connecting into that food and nutrition and and depressions and all kinds of stuff that your body just wants to go. It wants to run. It wants to be part of something that's movement. Movement equals healing. And so it's I could go on for hours and hours, but this is such a great topic because if we stay stationary and stay put, we will anchor ourselves and we will start to fall into that depression, which will kick in all the other emotions, which will kick into the addiction. So there's a lot here, but that's some of the things I've seen.
Awesome, Blue. Thanks for sharing that. Sean, Dan, did you want to talk about how events in the sports involved in the Valkyrie benefit overall well-being and addiction recovery?
Sean, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the benefits of the Valkyrie course, one of the reasons that we're happy to promote this is that it really gives, an opportunity for people to put something on a calendar and look forward to. I loved Blue's analogy or his example of, going just that one extra block. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've used that strategy either with myself or with my kids. So I think it's awesome. And, with the Valkyrie and Heber Valley Marathon, there's a ton of different events. So if you're not a runner or if you're not a swimmer, there's still going to be something for you because, there's running events, there's swimming events, there's mountain bike, road cycle. So if there's any aspiring athletes out there that are, using, training as a way to cope and manage and, create a better life for them, I would suggest, putting, Valkyrie on the calendar and, starting to work forward to that goal. It's a great course. It's a great environment. And, I just think it's as far as, things to do, this is a great place to go out and, challenge yourself.
I'm really glad that Rich and Blue touched on not just the engagement in sport and the training itself, but just the engagement overall. I think that sport and sport events, or even preparing for it, is so allegorical for life. And Sean and I, when we conceived the Valkyrie, we knew that it had to be grounded in a lot of reasons and give people in the Wasatch County community a lot of whys. Why should we have it there, and why should it give to the community? Frankly, Sean and I believe it's the only way to do this kind of race. It's a 109-mile course, and it's so tied to the natural geography that the only way to really grow and see this race succeed is that it's tied to the community. And Sean's right. This race has something for everyone, and I think it touches on a lot of the things that Rich and Blue have been talking about. First of all, just the physical and mental health that comes with the training and resilience for the sport that you might engage in. But that our race series also involves events that are highly collaborative, like the multi-sport relay team, or individual competition like the marathon and the half. It's fit for high performance athletes and casual athletes. We have versions of events that are really accessible for casual athletes and families, and even if a couple of athletes wanted to try the 7-sport relay as an ultra duo. We hope, and with the help of the Adventure Fest on Main, a local event, and the Heber Valley Chamber, that a lot of people that have never encountered stand-up paddle or kayak or mountain biking, you name it, that they might encounter those sports for the first time. And we invite anyone that wants to try something for the first time to come out and give it a go with a really supportive team. Support roles. If you don't do the race, if you don't compete in the race, we have a really important role on each relay team called the wingmate. They're basically the gear schlepper and driver, and they are basically holding the team together and making sure that the athletes can perform at their best. And it's just absolutely crucial. The number of volunteer opportunities. Thank you, Rich, so much for sending your group. I remember them parachuting in. They were an absolute force for us. We can't thank you enough for that. And there's such a variety of ways you can help, not only on the course, but just spectator and athlete services at the finish line as well. And engaging that way. Also through charitable giving and fundraising. Our race series is raising money for the Wasatch Community Foundation, and through that partnership with them, we are engaging the community broadly in their 5 pillar objectives of recreation, education, human services, health, and I don't want to sound like Rick Perry. Oh, what was the 5th one? Whoops. Arts. There, that's it. The whole Valkyrie race series and the Endurance Sports Summit touches on all of those. And finally, by starting with us and joining this great community event from the beginning, we're creating legacy in the local area to create a regional destination event. I think that the Valkyrie has a way to engage overall, not just in sport, but if sport were an allegory for life, there's ways to connect with people and with your community, and that's very grounding. And I think that's a real stable horizon if you're in recovery.
Those are awesome points, Valkyrie team. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. I feel like we touched on a lot of this already, but Rich, maybe do you want to talk about why endurance exercise is so beneficial to addiction recovery, and the importance of setting goals and having new experiences, new challenges, and making connections, and the opportunity to do that when you're taking part in exercise?
Perfect. Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, thanks, everybody. And like Kayla said, we touched on a lot of that in Blue. I was really happy to hear you mention the similarities to EMDR. It's pretty fascinating to me. And the tough part is there's some research on addiction treatment and addiction recovery and exercise and fitness, but there's surprisingly not as much as you would think or hope. Yeah. And I know there's a lot going on currently, and I'm excited to kind of see where that all comes out. I believe, just anecdotally, I think it's going to show a real strong connection between overall well-being, however you measure sobriety, whether that's harm reduction or abstinence. I think it's going to show that there's a really strong positive effect. There's a few things going on right now that I think's really interesting. There's an organization in Park City called Trail Talk, and they do all of their mental health treatment when possible. They meet the clients or patients at the trailhead, and they do all their therapeutic services while moving. If you're ever in Park City, you might see their Sprinter van driving around with the logo. It's a fascinating group of clinicians. The woman that started the organization is doing some research right now, and that was the first time I really made that connection between EMDR, which we know is highly effective, and the same idea of eye movement while you're walking or running. So I think there's definitely that's some very interesting stuff. I think overall, you mentioned accomplishment, well-being, connection, brain chemistry. We know that exercise increases dopamine, and we get the endorphins, and you'll hear it referred to as the runner's high. Just the idea that if you're training for a 100-mile trail race, it's a time commitment. I found that was one way. I'm also a 12-step guy, but making plans to run with the men that I train for races with was something to look forward to. And I knew I couldn't show up loaded. I knew that I needed to be on my game, or they would be a miserable experience. And so all those things, the benefits I'd seen in my life previously were one thing, but I think once I got into recovery, and I didn't mention in the introduction, the thing, I just wanted to mention kind of how Wasatch Crest came about in the first place. So the CEO and owner right now, his name's Jim Huffman. I met him about 20 years ago running a 50-mile race, and we started training together. Several times a week for years. We ran and trained for the Wasatch 100 in Western States, and he trained for Western States. I just paced him, but we became really close. And a few years later, we both found ourselves needing to get sober. And so we both kind of went our separate ways, stayed friends, but and we both ended up getting this recovery thing, which was such a gift. And essentially, I was running the treatment center up here in Heber, and he was looking to get into the business. He owned a program in San Diego, and I called him up. And a couple of months later, he was able to purchase the business, and we built the program from there. And that's actually where the name came from. Is a lot of our training we did on the Wasatch Crest Trail, and I wanted it to have some significance. So it's genuinely in our DNA. And I've just seen how it works for people, and it's worked for myself. One other anecdotal example is I was speaking with a nationally known ultra marathon coach, and he has actually built a big team of coaches in Colorado that coaches specifically ultra marathon runners in his division, and he is currently collecting data, but he said somewhere between 20 and 30% of their ultra marathon clients that are being coached are in addiction recovery. And I didn't have time to dig in a little bit more, but that's pretty interesting number. It's fascinating, and I think it can be such a wonderful way to kind of one of the things that you can do to really change your life. So that's what I've got.
That's awesome. Kayla, if you don't mind, I'm going to just piggyback on what we're just talking about. He's spot on. The neatest thing is that, one of the things that the athletes in recovery, they love is to share their experiences, and they will always be asked, why are you doing this? Well, it's the same question they get asked when they're in addiction. Why are you doing this? And it's kind of a cool thing, because this endurance type mindset about finishing what you start. I mean, we are real big on this, and that's why I'm excited to coach this team through the Valkyrie races, because we're going to talk about the finish line versus the starting line, right? It's like when you roll up to that starting line, it's inappropriate to even think about the finish line, because so much can happen. 109-mile course, so much could happen in between there. And so we talk about those goal setting, those small goals, those incremental goals. It's about the relay aspect of these kind of experiences with the team. They love them so much because you're only as strong as the person that's leading the first and second, third, fourth stage. You have to kind of rely on them to get to their destination. And so that team approach, it bonds people. But we talk a lot about the DNFs, the did not finishes, if you're out there and something goes wrong, and how that correlates to addiction recovery. There's times when you're out there and you might be having a great race or a great life, and then boom, you might get sucker punched or blindsided by life, and you might have to take a knee, you might have to stop, and then you won't finish that segment of life. But we also talk about having a DNF, not being able to finish a race is okay, but we don't allow you to ever give yourself a DNS, a did not start. And so the coolest thing about what I've noticed about that benefits these guys is that they're counted upon. I know where my athletes are going to be Friday night because they've signed up for a Saturday morning event. And when they come rolling onto the race course and getting ready to run and to go, I'm like, I know where you guys were last night. You were preparing for the race, you were getting the adequate sleep, and here you are. So in real time, it's kind of this awesome, kind of like sideline accountability. One of the coolest things that I've noticed too about this is when they're out there kind of finding that why, and they're doing this endurance stuff, and they hit these challenges, they get to overcome them in the moment. And sometimes it's a big mountain pass, or maybe it's a big steep climb or something, and they're like, man, I can't do this, right? We hit the wall. If you've been in endurance sports, I'm sure Rich, you guys know this, right? You hit the wall. And we talk about the wall in life. It's figurative. It's the figurative mindset of like trauma or problems and things we face. And the only person that can get through, over, around, or under the wall is the athlete themselves. And so this whole thing can be categorized into this life experience. Endurance running is one of the most amazing things because it's not easy. It's freaking hard. And it blows my mind every time I see one of my athletes accomplish one of these things, even if it is a 5K or 10K, because they were considered an addict and now they're an athlete. And so I love this concept, and that's why I'm so blown away by this Valkyrie series, because there's so much that's going to be able to be learned, experienced within it's a 12-hour whatever 109-mile course. There's real growth that comes from this kind of stuff, and they'll find their why out there. And the coolest part about it is it's in real time, instant gratification. They cross that finish line, they get that medal across their neck, and they've accomplished something. People that used to boo and jeer them are now cheering for them. A lot of times they've never had that. They've never had complete strangers clap for them or cheer for them. So it is this whole concept of like, changing one's life into something of greater value. So the exercise and benefits, oh man, off the charts.
Thanks, Blue. Thanks, Rich. Dan and Sean, did you want to expand on any of that or add to it?
Yeah, hey, this is Sean. So I'll expand or comment on a couple things. I agree with everything that's been said here. I've had a little experience with, overcoming, a couple things in my life, and I've used exercise quite often to overcome those. The science, it's nice to have like Rich and Blue and those guys, figuring out the science out there so we can quantify it and, give people, a reason, scientifically to get out there if they didn't have a reason already. Also, Wasatch Crest, like I mentioned, I actually spent a little time up there working for Rich as a tech. And that was kind of my first real experience with the Heber Valley. Having Wasatch Crest, like in that, just the environment alone, is quite amazing to, I think for recovery, just to have a place like that to recover is just amazing. Not to mention the facility and all the people who work there. Having known Rich for, 20 to 30 years, he is a ridiculously passionate person and, dedicated to everything he does. So I know that Wasatch Crest is a great place to be, and we've appreciated their support with the Valkyrie series. I'll tell you, last year without their support, we wouldn't have been able to pull it off. So we're really grateful to have them as a partner.
Thank you guys. I will move on. That was awesome. So this, I don't know if you guys each want to touch on this, but if you want to give any advice on how people can incorporate endurance-based, gym-based, outdoor adventure-based exercise into their recovery and into their routines. Because it might be hard to start, it might be intimidating at first.
I think this is the perfect one probably for Blue to touch on. But I'll just say, my experience has been like it took me 3 or 4 months after treatment to get back to where I could really run like I was used to running. But the biggest thing I think is just get out, start moving, get a routine. It's important for me. I set up a couple groups of people, same time every week, and just made it part of my life. I think if it's, if you only have 30 minutes, great, get out and move for 30 minutes. Sometimes it's hard to build in 2-hour runs or whatever. But just start small, don't get overly ambitious. And then, an organization like Addict to Athlete, which I've always heard so many incredible things about, I think that could be a really great place to start, but I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm gonna just thank Rich. I mean, I've had several of my own athletes go through Wasatch Crest, and it's an outstanding program. And everything he's saying, I'm gonna echo. And they put a lot of heart and soul into their program. I've seen a lot of good things come out of it. And that's kind of the goal when they move from treatment into the integrated world again. That's where we hope that they'll want to connect with teams like Addict to Athlete or Fit to Recover, and some of these other programs that are kind of like geared towards this. What I do with my athletes specifically is help them establish what we call the home team, right? So once you come back to your home team and you begin to regain your home court advantage in your own home, you know that there's some things that have to happen there so that you don't allow the visitors or the opposite team to come in and disrespect your home court. And so we teach these principles that a family that can recreate together will heal together. And there's so much. We get a lot of people that come in and they want to be a part of it, and they'll always say, the majority of them will say, well, this is great, I love the team approach, but I'm not a runner. And we all kind of laugh because we all think running sucks, right? Running's for criminals. But we feel great when we're done. And so when they say that, it's like, well, you're looking again at that finish line. Let's start with walking. We call the walking people the beautiful people because they get to be the ones that really have the experiences. They get to see more of the course. They get to kind of embrace those people towards the back of the pack and get to understand their why. When we kind of lean in towards that family system, we see that there's a lot of fear that can take place, a lot of unknown things, and fear will kind of stop us dead in our tracks. And so we teach the principles of erasing the fear and replacing it with faith, because fear and faith are the same thing when you boil them down. They just have different outcomes. That belief is kind of where we begin. Even in Team Addict to Athlete's name, with the Roman numeral 2, we specifically chose that for some very deep meaning. It's because the Roman numeral system, they don't identify 0. So you can never be less than 1. And so when someone comes out of treatment, or they come into the world of recovery or what have you, and they join someone else, they join something else, maybe it's a higher power, maybe it's their family system. Once you move from 1 to 2, the Roman numeral 2 represents a foundation. You can build upon that. And so that's what we like to teach and coach here, is that you're not going to be able to be a Olympic athlete your first go out. You're going to have to train. And those same principles to train you to become an amazing runner or athlete are the same principles used to pursue recovery. So there's so many metaphors. Like, sport is the great equalizer. And so when we do this within ourselves, running is such a beautiful thing because you're only competing against yourself, much like addiction recovery. So really, it's about allowing people to come in, start where they are, and lean them into it. And with patience, with time, with consistency, they can become any kind of athlete they want. But the most amazing thing is when you get them connected to the outdoor world, when they start to see things, they start to experience things. They never thought about climbing, hiking a trail or going out and seeing things and being part of nature and and the intricacies of not using headphones, but hearing nature, hearing the road under your feet, all this stuff. And we want it to become very spiritual and to them, to the point where they feel that reconnection. And it absolutely works. I think Rich is absolutely right. I mean, that is the foundation of I think, true healing.
Thanks, Blue. Go ahead. Sorry.
Kayla, I wonder if I could touch on a little bit more about life as an allegory for sport. Sport can be an allegory for life, but I think it works interchangeably. I know that there must be someone in recovery, or maybe a member of their family. It could be a clinician or other practitioner that's listening, and there might be someone that they're working with that is not inclined towards sport at all. But there's really something meaningful here. Let me just touch on a couple of personal experiences. When after my divorce, I wasn't able to relocate to Olympic cities all the time because I wouldn't be able to bring my family with me. And so my career profile changed, and then COVID hit and shuttered my industry. Silver lining was that I got to work with Sean and develop the Valkyrie, but there were some really tough times working alone, and that's not something that I'm used to. It was really soul crushing to be alone at home and not collaborating. I needed a team. I learned that about myself is I need a team. The experience of suddenly having much less to do in 2020, I learned about myself that an activation energy is really important. There's something about having something to commit to, creating resilience training in your life, whether it's sport or something else, is sometimes the activation energy you need to get over the hump in and even a short-lived bout of depression, or even on an ongoing regimen. And finally, it was less than a year ago, and Sean probably doesn't even know this. There was a time in last May when we're getting ready for the event, like in the last weeks, where I was waking up really feeling panic, and the weight was so much, and I needed to learn that I shouldn't, and that I didn't need to go through that alone. For about 7 days, I lined up 7 friends that would call me precisely at 7:30 in the morning when I'd wake up, when I felt the very worst, and they talked me through that first 20 to 40 minutes. I learned by that experience that I needed a coach. I needed a trainer. In my career organizing and operating Olympic villages, I've watched the world's greatest athletes perform with a world scale of ability. And they are hyper-focused, and because of that, everything we would consider enjoyable and recreational is actually a job for them. Like eating is a job for them, nutrition's a job for them, sleeping is part of their job. It's very regimented. And in a lot of ways, one wouldn't hold them in regard as the best role models for most people, because they're in their own heads and they're surrounded by people who make them the center of their own world. But the thing is, there is something to being surrounded all the time by excellence. It really does transfer. I mean, imagine if secondhand smoke were health benefiting. That's kind of like what excellence is like to me. You surround yourself with people that are really applying themselves, really aspiring to excellence. You do step up your game. It seems natural to me. There's a spark of ambition that catches while always having in view people committed to and applying themselves to push their own limits of what's possible. And I've noticed that if you've done it before, if you've done it even once, if you've touched the limit of your ability, you'll believe you can do it again, even in unrelated endeavors, because you've proved something about yourself. And remember, you had to do the work, but you didn't do it alone. You didn't do it on your own. And Blue and Rich have both touched on the why of things that you do. The why matters also. The experience of working on something together and viewing the process, whether, even recovery, as a temporary experience that you'll go through with your friends with ongoing benefit. When I work with Olympic organizing committees, we don't always have the world's best marketers, business professionals, operations people. We don't. I've seen that evidence of that. But the games do tend to attract people to the project who have the best reasons why they want to do it. They take a lot lower salary or wage because they care about legacy and the biggest event or local pride or the first ever thing or high stakes. Or maybe it's because we just love event projects. We love the beginning and the end of it. And the way that camaraderie and being in that foxhole organizing the event is kind of a compression of time, of that arc of experience that you share with other people gets compressed into just a few months instead of years. But it really affects you profoundly to go through that together. And you endear yourself to the experience, and you endear yourself to one another in such a short amount of time. And I think that's why I've enjoyed doing that so much in my career, and why I keep coming back to these kinds of grand events is because of the exquisite thrill of that moment that you've prepared for, and now you're doing it. It's about execution and then reflection. You get to learn from that and then ask yourself, well, I want to do over. I'm going to train for the next race. I'm going to be better at doing this next year. And I just thank you so much for the opportunity to share that with you.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you guys for such an insightful conversation. That was amazing. I'll go ahead and kick it back over to the Valkyrie team. How can we learn more?
Go ahead, Dan.
We have a great website that can give you a ton of great background about the race. It's at valkyrierelay.com. We're soon releasing an additional website, a standalone website for our marathon and half. And we also have our Endurance Sports Summit, which is our endurance sport expo and family-oriented live site at the finish line. So it's really an entire day on June 18th, which is the day before Father's Day. Tons of sport action starting from 5 a.m. in the morning at the start of the Valkyrie relay all the way until 9 at night when we shut everything down at Soldier Hollow. But we'd love to have people line the course in Midway City and Heber City, all over Heber Valley. We're taking registrations now. We're hitting our stride right now with registrations, and nothing can feel better than to see a lot of teams and a nice critical mass of athletes running the course and connecting to the community. Our partnering event is the Adventure Fest on Main. That's on Main Street of Heber City, and the course runs right through it. They are co-promoting some training experiences and sport encounter experiences for us, and we hope that people in recovery and their families will find a way to either compete or support competitors. And there's so many ways to do that. Please go to valkyrierelay.com and communicate with us about a chance to either exhibit at the finish line in our expo, to compete, to volunteer, or to support a team, or raise money for a local nonprofit. Sean and I love talking about the event, but this one stands out as a really special conversation. And thank you, Kayla, so much for inviting us.
Yeah, and hey, just if I can add real quick, just to kind of expand, as far as like the offerings of what the event has, it's not just a relay. You know, the relay is a big part of what we offer, but there's both the full relay, which is the full course, which is, you know, like Dan mentioned, a little over 100 miles. There is a shorter course, which is the sprint version, which Dan, I think this year is going to be close to 69 once we're done with all the permitting. There's also within the relay, there's a marathon and a half marathon that runs the same course as the relay. Both the marathon and half marathon can be run as a 2-person team. So it's a relay with a relay, I guess. So you can have somebody run the first half of the marathon or the half marathon, and then your teammate runs the second half of it. Also, there is a 5K, which is held within Soldier Hollow. So the 5K starts in the morning, and then I believe the morning before there's a 10K that is held by Adventure Fest. So there's a day before event as well.
It's actually going to be in the evening as a more family oriented fun run. It's a 10K called Main to Main from Main Street, Heber City to Main Street Midway and back.
Cool.
Great. That was perfect, guys. Thanks. Blue, can you tell us how to find out more about Addict to Athlete?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. My heavens, we're looking forward to this event. This is going to be great. Thank you so much, Valkyrie team. We appreciate this. Team Addict to Athlete, you can find everything on our website. It's addicttoathlete.org. That's addicttoathlete.org. We have all of our backlog podcasts. We've sent out 3 podcasts a week on addiction recovery, on health and wellness. A lot of good professional athletes have been on the podcast. So they're great training run material. So get out there, put the headphones in, and be inspired by some of these folks that have been down that same path that many of you might find yourself on. And then, of course, just jumping on and being part. We have teams and chapters all over the state of Utah, and we continue to grow. And you won't really get a feel for it until you throw on one of the jerseys and step out of that anonymity, so to speak, because we're a firm believer that you don't have to hide from this anymore. Overcoming addiction, we believe, is a superpower. You don't have to hide from it. It can definitely do what we call turn the mess into the message. So yeah, addicttoathlete.org will connect you with everything.
Okay, great. Thanks, Blue. And then to learn more about Wasatch Crest, you can visit our website, wasatchcresttreatment.com. That's our admissions phone number. It's available 24/7. So if you're struggling with addiction, feel free to call that, and you'll speak to one of our counselors who can help connect you with care that's a right fit. And we have various levels of care, including a residential treatment center, partial hospitalization program, an intensive outpatient program, and transitional living residences. And that's all in Heber City. Rich, did I miss anything? Do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's great. I'm just excited to get all of our current and former clients involved with the relay, and I think it's amazing what Addict Athlete's doing, and I feel lucky to be part of the Valkyrie relay. I was kicking myself because I thought one other way to get involved is to volunteer. I'm sure they probably always need volunteers. If you're not at a point where you can participate physically, it's something about being part of it. Even if you're handing a cup of water to somebody on the marathon course, it can get you excited. So thank you for everybody's time this morning.